Happy Halloween! Is everyone feeling scared?
Are we spooky enough yet? Hello?
I'm not sure.
Terrifying.
Working. Boom. Boom. Yes?
I wonder if typing the word boo is scary to Melanoe. I feel like she startles easily. I wonder if even just reading the word boo is...
Everyone type boo, quickly.
Quick.
Do it.
Excellent.
Type boo.
Well, welcome.
But not in like a boo way,
In a
scary way.
Welcome to Vixens on Guard. Tonight is our Shakespeare Showdown, or as Brizo would say, Vixens on Book.
Because I definitely don't have anything memorized.
Heck no. So what we have done tonight is we have each taken a passage from Shakespeare and we'll make it all spooky. But first, let's do introductions.
Hello there. I'm Thalassa, and this evening I thought I would dress up as a narwhal.
Ooh.
With my lovely horn, if you know what I mean.
There's something I want to say, but I will bite my tongue. But you have a lovely, lovely horn.
If you know what I mean. Quite
I'm
lovely.
Selene, and tonight, instead of being a knight, I am an attendee of a masquerade ball, accompanied by my skull and my crow.
Such dear friends.
We're all at the ball.
And I'm Brizo, and tonight I'm a kitty cat, and I'm meow meow meow, and I'm meow meow meow.
Love that for you. I love
Thank
it.
you. I also love it.
And I am Hippolyta, and I am taking a page from Brizo's book, and I am a pirate. Arr! Am I doing that right?
You're doing it beautifully, darling. I love it.
Mateys. And I also...
Brizo, would you say she's doing it perfectly?
I might, Selene. It's perfect.
Fantastic. All right, so tonight, each of the ladies here has selected a spooky passage of her own, if you know what I mean, for us to discuss dramaturgically all of the Shakespeare that is fit to print, that is spooky and haunted and ghostly and monstery and rawr.
What a lovely monster that is, Hippolyta.
I know. Isn't he adorable? He's
Quite handsome.
rawr.
I'm sure he has a great personality.
Oh, he does, and such excellent teeth. In any case, we'll throw this over to Thalassa. She's going to go first tonight.
That is true. So for anyone that wants to follow along in the Folgers, I'm going to be doing a piece from The Tempest, Act 1, Scene 2. Why did I not write this down? Line 395. That I did write down. For anyone that doesn't know anything about The Tempest, frankly, the scariest part of the entire play is the fact that there is one female character in the entire thing. It is an island of men, which for some of us might be terrifying and for others might be quite exciting. Depends on who you are. However, essentially, long story short, a Dane, I believe, Prospero, was banished to this island with men, has created a massive storm with his very powerful magic, and has shipwrecked an entire crew of bad people that he does not like. And they must all work together through crazy insanity and silly happenstances with lots and lots of magic to, have a happy ending, as all of Shakespeare's plays end.
At least the comedies.
Please follow along with the Folgers if you like. And also in our chat, our mod tonight is Melanoe. So she will also be available to assist you if you get lost into where we are talking about. And anyway, take it away, Thalassa.
All right. So, starting with Caliban's line. I must eat my dinner. This island's mine, by Sycorax my mother, which thou takest from me. When thou camest first, thou strokest me, madest much of me, wouldst give me water with berries in it, and teach me how to name the bigger light, and how the less that burn by night and day. And then I loved thee, and showed thee all the qualities of the isle, the fresh springs, brine pits, barren places, and fertile. Cursed be I that did so. All the charms of Sycorax, toads, beetles, bats, light on you. For I am all the subjects that you have, which first was my own king. And here you stymie in this hard rock while you do keep the worst of the island from me. Woo!
Woo!
So I particularly love this piece because one, we talk about Sycorax, who is Caliban's mother, who is the only other female like ever mentioned besides like the spirits that are called upon throughout the show. Who she was like a spoopy, like mother witch type, who ruled the island before Prospero came. So we love a good shout out. And then on top of that, Caliban is literally cursing Prospero with all the charms of his mother Sycorax, I almost said a profanity, of the BA witch mother Sycorax, calling on everything spoopy from toads and beetles and bats and cursing Prospero, who has been just not a nice person, I would say, to poor Caliban and the rest of the spirits that are on this island. It's super spoopy. I don't know. What do you all think?
I think, in addition to the lack of women being nightmare-esque, stolen land is also incredibly spooky, and I think this monologue speaks so well to that. Just, Caliban identifying, we were here first. This isn't yours. Like, this was our home. My mother has a right to this place, and you displaced us. And I think he has every right to be placing this curse on Prospero for a litany of reasons. But summon all those frogs, bats, creepy crawlies. I don't endorse Prospero's behavior. I do endorse Caliban cursing him for that behavior.
It's true. Well, it's also very interesting. A lot of depictions of how the show is presented is Caliban is a monster. So lots of people will do lots of excessive makeup on Caliban and make him very, very spoopy. And as they're saying in the chat, colonism is the scariest monster of all.
It's so real.
It's true. But frankly, it's for me, I just want to know, back when Willie Shakes was directing and such, how? Literally how? This is a show that has a shipwreck, that has magic. People would turn into trees on this island, and they turn back into not trees. There are monsters. There are so much magic. There's a part later in the show, spoiler alert, where some of the crew thinks that they found a big feast and it literally disappears before their eyes. I want to know how they did this. Like, who was their tech designer? Who did this? I want the answers.
I will say one of my favorite forms of magic is that magic that happens when an actor on stage says something and it just is true. And we
Theater of the mind.
Right? When an actor says, look at this feast before me, and there's nothing in front of them, but we all go, oh yes, what a feast. Like, that particular kind of magic is so exciting.
That's true.
And so I wonder if that was just part of it. It was just, audience was like, yes, of course. She's a tree now, I understand.
Part of me thinks perhaps the actors were just like,
the classic tree.
they just stood very still. Actually, fun fact, in my youth,
Did you play a tree?
I played a tree. Like
Dream rolls.
Tree number 3. And I wrapped my arm around tree number 2.
Oh,
And we stood there. It was not as, as
Tree on tree action? Was there tree on tree action?
if you know what I mean.
Were you draped in flowing fabrics?
I was indeed. It was quite majestic.
Well, and speaking of flowing fabrics, that's what I thought of when you were mentioning the shipwreck, is the classic theatre trick of the water with a blue sheet whooshing. Exactly.
My role is playing the water.
My favorite is when you have people go behind the sheet to show, like, oh, we're in the water, we're swimming.
That would have been the shipwreck. Is you have the entire crew just going, ah. Blah, 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 blah.
We're all such talented actors. It's really incredible.
We are professionals, Brizo.
It's true. It's true. I will say there was something I thought of when Selene was talking about, and our chat was saying colonialism is the spookiest thing of all. Was that I think what I love about this curse is that it feels so earned, because Caliban is saying, I gave you everything, right? I gave you this island. I was generous with you. So now bite me, right? Like that's really what's happening. And I'm like, yes. And so, yeah, I love the sort of the earnedness of this moment.
It definitely rings a bell as far as a local on an island showing the newcomer to, quote Caliban, the fresh springs, brine pits, the barren place and fertile. I loved thee. And then here you stymie in this hard rock, whiles you do keep me from the rest of the island.
A bit of a taking what I want, and you know, you get my leftovers. And yes, not nice.
I'm sure they were not very thankful for it.
Sort of like a bleep me, I got mine sort of thing.
Sort of.
The chat is saying that they believe that bite me was in the first draft of the text in it.
See, why he would ever cut that, I don't understand.
It's a different play of the
meeting. We weren't included.
Yes, if the Vixens had been involved, bite me would have stayed.
Yes. The monologue would have simplified to bite me.
Bite me.
Exit.
I wish I had a sign with me. I want to be like, bite me.
In speaking about some exceptional witches and laying a spooky scene, I would love to share the text that I have found, unless we have any outstanding points on the Tempest that we want to make. Anyone in the chat? I don't see any burning desires to talk about the Tempest.
Outstanding points are always welcome. If throughout you're like, oh, this reminds me of Caliban, throw it in there. We'll listen.
We love it. It's Socratic. A different tone than the Tempest. The text that I will be doing tonight is from one of the histories. So I have a piece from Henry VI, Part 2, which you can find also in the Folger's Shakespeare Library. We'll be looking specifically at Act 1, Scene 4, starting at line 17. However, it would be cruel if I was to just start talking to the masses about Henry VI, Part 2, without getting you up to speed on, like, what happened in Part 1 and why we're here. So, similarly topical to some of the topics that we were discussing in The Tempest, Henry VI, Part 1 is mainly focusing on this political drama about shifting seats of power. Wow, we know that. And so pretty much what's happening in Part 1 is that the very, very young Henry VI is ascending to the throne after his father Henry V has died, and Gloucester has offered to basically give him some guidance, help oversee things until Henry VI is of age to, lead on his own. But the other people of the court are very quick to suspect Gloucester having some ulterior motives. Spoiler alert, he really does. Gloucester and his wife, the Duchess, are second in line to basically ascend to the throne if something is to go wrong with young Henry. So it's a pretty easy path to follow. In addition to that ne'er-do-well tendency, Henry is also prophesized in part 1 to lose the majority of the land that his father has gained. So people are nervous, tensions are high. We know this political climate pretty well. Also, meanwhile, Joan of Arc is kicking derriere across continental Europe. Unfortunately, gets sentenced to a brutal death that we know from our historical educations, and curses the collective English evermore. So another curse being, rightfully bestowed upon the wrongdoers. The War of the Roses begins, and the whole narrative of part 1 gets tied up in this nice little bow when Suffolk, part of the English court, lots of people here, captures Margaret of France and is basically like, Henry, this is a wife for you. Hooray, you should marry Margaret. So part 2 then begins with Henry, taking Margaret as his bride, and everything's seeming to go well. However, as the prophecy foretold, the language says in return for Margaret, which I personally despise, but in return for Margaret, Henry VI agrees to return some of the land from France that they were occupying. So the prophecy is already unraveling. So with this happening and the greedy Gloucester and his wife, the Duchess, eager to ascend to the throne, they think that perhaps their chance to rule the kingdom is so much closer than they had assumed. So the Duchess, being very practical in this Act 1, Scene 4, she opts to consult a witch to speak of Henry's fate. She wants to take life by the reins. She doesn't want to just wait around and see it unfold. She's like, honey, we are getting a witch in the court, and we're going to find out everything there is to know about what might happen to us and Henry's fate and all of that. Right, you just call up the witch and say, I need to know now, I can't wait. I think we should call a witch. I have a lot of questions about the next month or so. And
call the witch.
Just call the witch, get her on the phone. So, here we are with the witch. Actually a conjurer, so the Duchess is consulting with Henry Bolingbroke, who is identified as a conjurer. Henry would later be tried and executed for his witchcraft. But in his lively state, Bolingbroke is going to hold a seance/exorcism of sorts over the body of a claimed witch, Marjorie Jourdain, in the presence of 2 priests and the Duchess, who has questions. So everyone is congregated, and they're kind of in levels. Almost think of it like an operating theater. So Bolingbroke is going to do this exorcism. The Duchess will ask her questions, and we'll get some answers. Of course, there's nothing creepier than a seance. And I also love that in the universe of Henry VI, and just in Shakespeare's world, that ghosts can also tell the future. It kind of breaks the rules in many wonderful ways. So they're going to find out the future from some ghosts. Alas, we're waiting, and Marjorie Jourdain is prostrated on the ground, preparing to be exorcised, and things aren't quite moving fast enough for the Duchess. And she literally says to Bolingbroke, the sooner the better, to which Bolingbroke replies to her at line 17, which is where we'll start. He says, "Patience, good lady, wizards know their times. Deep night, dark night, the silent of the night, the time of night when Troy was set on fire, the time when screech owls cry and bandogs howl, and spirits walk and ghosts break up their graves. That time best fits the work we have in hand. Madam, sit you and fear not. Whom we raise, we will make fast within a hallowed verge." And then there's a delicious stage direction that says, here they do the ceremonies belonging and make the circle. Bolingbroke and Southwell reads Conjuro Te, etc. It thunders and lightens terribly, and then the spirit riseth. At which point, they speak with a very helpful spirit, and they get all the answers that they want very quickly. It's a very agreeable spirit. And then we just kind of move on. The seance gets interrupted, and more of the history unfolds, but that's what we're focusing on for now. So, the first things first, I adore the statement, patience, good lady, wizards know their times. It's just something every wizard has probably said.
Wizards
know their times. Yeah.
I've never met a wizard who was late. Not once.
They're punctual people.
They know time.
So wizards know their times. And speaking of time, he's explaining how we can't just do this at night. It needs to be the deepest, darkest, silent point of the night. He literally compares it to when Troy was set on fire, when the Greeks came in on the Trojan horse, waited until all of the Trojans were sleeping, and then they were like, okay, it's quiet. Everyone's asleep. They're not suspecting a thing. Let's wreak havoc. This is something that I would just call the witching hour, but he's taking a whole monologue to describe exactly what that is, saying things of when owls cry and when bandogs howl. And the bandog, I actually imagine to look a lot like Melanoe's dog, but with one head instead of multiple. But it's that kind of like scary, mythical dog that kind of went on to be some friendlier breeds that we know, but those dogs are howling and the ghosts are emerging from the grave and walking among us. And then only once it's that time can we actually do the spooky seance proper. And also, I think it's very fun that they recite a Conjuro Te in the stage directions, which is Latin for like, I summon, I conjure. He's a conjurer. I think I've seen some Conjuro Tes in Urania's notebooks, but the internet has a surprising lack of them, so I was trying to actually find, like, what a Conjuro Te would entail. No luck. I don't know if that's just to keep, like, demonic portals off of the internet.
I think it's probably better for all of us.
That's true, although we could just stream the craft and probably figure it out from there.
I love the craft.
Oh, do not get me started.
Also, I love the idea that perhaps an actual seance happened on stage.
Exactly. And so that's what I was thinking about. Like, where did they draw the line? Because he's just saying, like, oh, they do the Conjuro Te, they form a circle. But my first thought is, you know, if you're one of the actors doing it, do you actually feel comfortable doing an entire demonic summoning and you know, dramaturgically, how accurate are you getting to that actual summoning, and, you know, when do superstitions kick in and all of that? And I think further to that point, what Bolingbroke is so good about, and theatrically what works so well here, similar to what we were talking about in The Tempest, is, you know, we didn't have all of the theatrical advancements that we have today, so there couldn't just be, to my knowledge, a flash of lightning, or, you know, someone with the metal sheet making the thunder sound, and a fog machine planted behind the rock, and, you know, all of those things that we can just do today on a stage. And so he's really putting in all of the legwork to take us from what is otherwise a political drama, and then being like, okay, and now it's very spooky, and there are ghosts, and they will tell the future, and it's the middle of the night, and now you're afraid, and suddenly you're like, well, yes, I am. You did it.
I'm also very curious as far as the production goes, given the time and the place, and the we were really religious. We really liked the church then. So I'm very curious how far they were willing to go at risk of upsetting audience members, especially audience members of some clout that could get them in trouble. So it's also, were they comfortable with it, but also could they get away with it?
Also, could you imagine being in the Globe Theatre outdoors and have that evening's performance have an actual thunderstorm hit? And what that would do to you as an audience member, thinking, am I actually watching witchcraft? Like, am I in this right now? Because I don't know if I want to be in this right now.
And you have to think about how most theaters, and I would assume especially the Globe, considering all of the things that have happened upon it, are a little bit haunted. There is some sort of presence there, whether it's just, the residue of all of the people who have trod upon that stage before, or if there is an actual, live-in friend, or not so much of a friend if they like to lock you into places, if you've ever been in theater like that, So you think about that. Could you be inciting something to come to you by being part of this production? Or if you were a super method actor, which I do not recommend, would you go all in on this and then accidentally summon a demon to follow you around the rest of your career?
Problematic. There's things to take into consideration.
Honestly, the thing is...
Go for it.
Well, it's just people and audience members and actors, and just as human creatures, we're just so susceptible to suggestion that I know for me personally, it's so easy to say, like, this doesn't bother me, this doesn't scare me, when I'm, taking in information when the sun is up, and then suddenly if I'm alone and it's dark, everything is real and everything is horrifying and I'm going to be murdered. And so, yeah, exactly. I wonder when it becomes if there really is the thunderstorm and then you're heading home at night after having seen this. I love it.
Got to hug up.
As we were chatting, the chat, specifically Lisa Piece of Pumpkin Pie, had the same thought that I did. She says, curious that this play isn't seen as a curse the same way that the Scottish play is. And literally, as we were talking about it, I was like, why isn't this the one that we're not freaked out about?
Yeah.
I think it's probably just because it's not done nearly as much.
That's true.
I certainly don't know it very well, but I would love to do a seance on stage, personally. We would have to have Melanoe consult, though.
Yes, Melanoe did say go hard or go home in regard to the actual summoning. So I do think Melanoe would show up with all the proper accoutrements. Orania would probably plant in something, and
yes,
I don't know. Go hard or go home.
Now, so, all right.
So are we ready to move on to our next
I think we can.
moment of spoopiness?
We have seance.
So to sort of continue this theme of sort of conjuring, but sort of what one conjures from what we might call the infernal kingdom, the piece that I'm offering to the spoopy space today is from Titus Andronicus. And if you're following along at home on the Fault of Shakespeare, it is Act 5, Scene 2 of Titus Andronicus. So we're towards the end of the play. Act 5, final act. We're going to start at line 29. And this is Tamara's monologue. But importantly, she's not speaking as Tamara. She's speaking as the embodiment of revenge. And she has specifically come to Titus Andronicus at this point in the play as the embodiment of revenge, as part of her own plot of revenge against Titus. And so at this point in the play, the amount of death and blood and gore and terribleness in this play, if you weren't here last week for our Vixens Unrehearsed, in which we did a version of Titus Andronicus, you might not understand the sheer amount of death and destruction in this play. But in the classic form of a revenge tragedy, there's just this sort of constant back and forth of Titus kills Tamara's kids, Tamara kills Titus's kids, or the other way around, and everyone's killing each other and hurting each other in various ways. It's terrible, it's terrible. At this point in the play, Tamara sort of feels like she's starting to win. She has found herself as the queen of the Goths, who were taken over by the Romans, now married to the Roman emperor. And so even though she was a political prisoner, now she's empress. And she sort of is doing pretty well for herself. Also, she's a true villain in that she has encouraged her sons to assault Lavinia, the daughter of Titus Andronicus. Talk about a villainous person. And at this point, she's sort of putting the last chess piece down, which is to say, now it's time to actually end Titus Andronicus. And the way she's going to do that is by convincing him that she is revenge, come to help him with his revenge, but in fact, she's luring him into hers. Now, spoiler alert, she fails, but sort of, again, in the tradition of revenge's tragedy, everyone fails. Pretty much everyone dies. That's just part of it. So, to not give too much away, I'm going to go ahead and read this monologue. Again, we are Tamara, formerly Queen of the Goths, currently Empress, coming in the night, sort of a devilish version of the Romeo and Juliet balcony scene, coming in the night, looking up at Titus in the balcony, and she says, "Know thou, sad man, I am not Tamara. She is thy enemy, and I thy friend. I am revenge, sent from the infernal kingdom to ease the gnawing vulture of thy mind by working wreakful vengeance on thy foes. Come down and welcome me to this world's light. Confer with me of murder and of death. There's not a hollow cave or lurking place, no vast obscurity or misty veil, where bloody murder and detested rape can couch for fear, but I will find them out, and in their ear tell them my dreadful name, Revenge, which makes the foul offender quake." Spooky. So, what I love about this monologue, and why I do it by myself sometimes in my room when I want to feel powerful and evil, is largely that when taken in the context of the play, Tamara's a villain. Many of them are, but Tamara's a villain. When taken out of the context of the play, it's rather empowering as a woman who was not allowed to act on the English stage, thank you, Mr. Henslow, to speak this speech, because the sheer power of being revenge incarnate and being able to make things like murder and rape quake in their boots at your sheer power is just so cathartic. And so I find myself thinking, yes, I want to make those things quake in their boots. Sign me up. Now, of course, the lesson of the play is revenge doesn't work. It's not good. It keeps turning on itself and everyone dies. But in the moment, it feels really good to be like, yes, let's summon this hellish feminine energy to make terrible people quake in their boots. That's what I want. So that's why I brought this in. Also, I love the sort of ambiance creation of hollow cave, lurking place, misty veil. It's so sort of evocative. And Tamara's a great villain, especially talk about roles for women. She's awful, but she's three-dimensional. She's a terrifying woman. And I sort of love that.
Certainly one of the most delicious seeming roles to have the opportunity to dive into in full. Try to get into that psychology and all of that good stuff. I'm curious about, if you, Brizo, were to play Tamara in a production of Titus, how do you think this moment would be done? Is she in a disguise? Where is the disconnect of believing yes, this is revenge? Where does that happen?
Well, I do think, I've seen this play done a few times, and they've always put her in disguise. A mask, sort of your average thing.
Right, a cloak and a mask. And
but there's something about it that goes back to your piece, Selene, that I sort of just wonder if just in the cover of darkness and a little bit of a spoopy story voice change, right? If she normally talks like this and then she's like, I am revenge, right? A little vocal change in the darkness of night might be enough.
I'm picturing a big spooky tree.
Yes.
Spooky carving on it.
Yes.
And they're both against the tree facing away. And so she's sort of, you can see both of their faces the whole time so that he can't see her actual face. But in the darkness with the moon and the mists and all of that sort of thing, and the howling of whatever is about you, which could be many things, that your mind would automatically create a creature in your mind to fulfill as this portrait of revenge, since you are not actually seeing the person. That's how I think I would stage it, because I'm often staging productions of Titus Andronicus in the Vixen's headquarters.
On the reg.
I've seen it done, yes. I love that, though. I love the spooky tree. I love them sort of back to back. I also love that it's sort of, there's something very sexy about this.
Sure, yes.
She's inviting Titus into something, and I like that. Sexy villains. I'm just pro sexy villains.
As you were reading it, I definitely was like, no, I'd go. I would go, definitely, absolutely.
Well, and she keeps saying, like, come over here, welcome me.
Yeah.
Like, where's my welcome wagon?
I'm here to help. And I do think, Thalassa, thank you for saying that. I think that's a successful, I feel like I have succeeded as Tamara in this moment, because she should be enticing in this moment. And of course, again, spoiler alert, Titus doesn't believe her. He recognizes her immediately, but he pretends to not recognize her to be able to kill her children and feed them to her later. It's fine. Anyway.
Oh, now I'm hungry.
It's very Sweeney Todd. It's delicious. It's fantastic. But he doesn't believe her. But we should, as the audience, think, oh, yeah, I'd go. Yeah, that sounds good.
There's something so delicious about the revenge. Because you want to believe that the revenge is going to solve your problems. It's going to clear the slate. And it will mean that you have won and you've destroyed your enemies. And while you may have destroyed them, most likely you have not won. It is going to haunt you, especially as Shakespeare has shown us. When you do bad things, you feel bad about it until you die. That's a through line in most Shakespearean shows. Unless you are crazy and are like Richard III. Otherwise, you're just like, I don't have regrets about anything. It's all good. But most of the time, no, you end up having terrible regrets, even if it doesn't come until the last moment. And you have to live with that briefly.
Well, and that's, that it's exactly that, right? It's that feeling of like, oh, this is so exciting and delicious and I want it. And then you're like, this is really bad. This isn't going to work. This is a terrible cycle.
Well, and that's what's so smart about the way this monologue is written for Tamara, because I think, just, like we've said, it's written to be just so inherently seductive and enticing of an author. And obviously with bad things in the world, what you so often hear people say is like, well, I didn't know. It seemed innocent enough, or it was enticing for these reasons. People rarely just say like, oh, I'll do this bad thing for the sake of the terrible outcome that it will lead to. There's some very attractive detail of it that's hard to say no to. So I appreciate whenever writers, and not to just call Shakespeare just any writer, but I do love when writers actually, make that evil choice a little more complicated and human, because, some people are just evil, but a lot of people have a complex web of events that get them to that evil place and evil ideologies and all of that. So I appreciate the humanity of humanity, writing it to actually be something that is attractive and enticing.
Yeah,
the deal says no.
Kind of has a lot to say about all of this. Solo del Sol, who I'm going to go out on a limb, is Electrina del Sol, said, does experiencing ultimate loss and tragedy justify feeling such a deep desire for sweet and horrible revenge? Does it?
No, it doesn't.
I think that's the question the play is asking, in the sense that I think in a way, which is why I like to do this monologue alone by myself in my home, is I think it justifies feeling it. It doesn't justify acting on it. And what this play is telling us is that once you start acting on revenge, it never ends. Right? It sort of never ends until everyone dies.
Or everyone kills you.
Or everyone kills you. Yeah. But truly the feeling of revenge, of wanting revenge when your life has been sort of torn apart, is very human. As Selene was saying, is very human.
True. As long as you're the last one standing, she says.
That's really the important thing. And as vixens, we always are. Sorry about it.
Is there anything else from the chat, Thalassa?
Well, very fascinating, just because we've been also discussing how shows would be produced. We have someone in the chat who is a lighting designer.
Amazing.
Yeah, Douglas was saying that he was the light designer for the show of Titus, and he did I assume Jorginda, so sorry. They lit them from behind in profile.
Oh, I love that.
Delicious.
Very exciting. I wish we
You
could.
truly can see it's like a silhouette. Oh, I love that. Thank you, Douglas.
That's very fun. That made me think when we were talking about the idea of being against a tree in the mist, and even more so with the idea of literally creating a silhouette, I was imagining, those optical illusions where it's, if you focus on the white, then it's like the young face, and if you focus on the gray, then it's this older face with the, crooked nose and like a traditional witch face. I was thinking about that optical illusion when we were thinking, like, how does Tamara pull this off? I don't know how you would actually do that with just one face.
But I love
But I
it.
certainly thought of it.
Very interesting. All right, my dear, shall we move on to our final scene of the evening?
Yes, please.
All right, so this will be my scene. So I've actually enlisted the assistance of the other vixens in order to perform the scene. So we will be looking at Macbeth. And we also spoke of, revenge and betrayal and such. And this is a good one for that as well. So we will be looking at Act 1, Scene 3. And so that is starting on, I believe, line 33. So just to give you a quick recap of what has occurred in the play thus far, which is not a lot, but it is very spooky, is in the first scene, we have met the three witches, the three weird sisters or wayward sisters, depending on what translation you are looking at. And they are creatures that become very difficult to describe. When we get to the scene we are discussing, we then get the actual description of them, but they are sitting there together discussing how Macbeth is coming and that they are looking forward to meeting with him, although he does not know. So that is the first scene. And then in the second scene, we meet Duncan, who is the king, and there's just been a ridiculously terrible battle where there has been much, bloodshed and killing and some of this and and spurting all about. And so Marcus and Banquo, they have done a really good job in this battle. They've just been doing all the stabbing, blood flying about everywhere, just, wiping it on tartans. It's delicious. And they've done such a good job that Duncan has noticed. And he's also decided he needs to execute the rebels. So he's got to execute the Thane of Cawdor. And he's like, well, I need to give a promotion to one of my dudes who's been doing so great with all of this bloodletting. So we're going to give it to Marcus. He's going to be my new Thane. So you there, go tell him that. Go give him a whistle. Tell him, good job, you. Feeling it. Very handsome, very fancy. Gonna wear this fancy thing. You're getting a promotion. All right. Now that we have reached that point, now we are in scene 3, and the witches are preparing to meet them as they come across the heath. Ooh. So we're going to start with, I believe, Selene is going to kick us off.
The weird sisters, hand in hand. I want to change my voice. I want to be creepier.
Oh, and I want to dancing in the stage direction. So dance.
Oh. Here we are dancing. The weird sisters, hand in hand, posters of the sea and land, thus do go about, thrice to thine, and thrice to mine, and thrice again to make up 9. Peace the charms wound up.
So foul and fair a day I had not seen.
How far is it called to Forest? What are these so withered and so wild in their attire, that look not like the inhabitants of the earth, yet are on it? Live you, or are you aught that man may question? You seem to understand me, by each at once her choppy finger laying upon her skinny lips. You should be women, and yet your beards forbid me to interpret that you are so.
Speak if you can. What are you?
All hail Macbeth, hail to thee, Thane of Glamis.
All hail Macbeth, hail to thee, Thane of Gondor.
All hail Macbeth, that shalt begin hereafter.
Sir, why do you start and seem to fear things that sound so fair? In the name of truth, are ye fantastical, or that indeed which outwardly ye show? My noble partner, you greet with present grace and great prediction of noble having, and of royal hope, that he seemed racked withal. But to me you speak not. If you can look into the seeds of time, and say which grain will grow and which will not, speak then to me, who neither beg nor fear your favors, nor your hate. Spooky. Anyway,
Right at the end.
this was so good. Look at that beard. Fantastic. And that is something I would really like to talk about tonight. So the description of the witches in the actual text, so this is textually based, is that these creatures have beards and yet they appear to be women. Now, there's a couple of different interpretations of that. One being that obviously women were not appearing on the English stage, so maybe they were poking fun at the fact that some of them might have beards. But then again, they might have also had luxurious, fancy fake beards, which I am a big fan of, I must say. But then there is also this discussion, because there's a saint who is a bearded woman, and often there are saints who have beards because that beard serves as a protection for them. So if we're going to get religious about it, which was how it would be back in the times of Shakespeare, that in order to preserve a woman and her virginity, which is often thought to be the most important thing about her, that if she had a beard, that automatically places her into a position equal to that of a man, and therefore she is no longer a commodity, she is a person all her own, just by the very power of having that beard. And if you sort of think about that, if you had a luxurious beard, if you had the ability to grow that beard and therefore attain a place in society that was before this completely closed off to you, because in general, most, women or female presenting have a difficulty in growing facial hair, although not necessarily, depending on hormonally, you might be able to. Unfortunately, I do not have that ability, although I think sometimes it would be pretty sweet. But at least back in the day for Shakespeare, that having this beard automatically signifies a level of society that most regular women would not ever be able to attain. And even the very lowest person who has a beard is automatically higher in ranking than a woman. So therefore, they're going to take what these witches say more seriously, because they have this otherworldly quality to them, but that they also have this epic beard. And I know I'm really harping on the beards, but you know how I feel about facial hair. You've known long-time fans know how I feel about Tom Selleck. And I want to say that he truly is fantastic, whether he has a beard or not.
It's true.
The stash is required, but the beard is not a detraction. In fact, it is only an attraction that brings me in closer. So again, this is something I wanted to discuss, sort of what these creatures would look like and how to make them more interesting and frightening and creepy to the people. How do we make them so different from normal or what people are used to seeing? Like, what do you do for that? So,
I'm being made aware in this moment, Hippolyta, that I perhaps should not pluck my chin hairs. It's a thing that I do, and I'm thinking I'm plucking away my power, apparently. So if you do see me with a slight beard, that's why. I'm just more powerful now. I'm sorry about it. I love this.
I can only grow one.
I have a few. I can get in there.
Sure. You're powerful.
Powerful. No, I love this. I think, it's so interesting. We talk about gender in these plays, and we don't really know how Elizabethans were playing with gender, except for things like this, right? In terms of how much are we playing with gender here? And it's sort of exciting to see powerful women with beards. I love that depiction in this moment, and why not lean into that? You know?
I can only think of Conchita Wurst right now, who is so beautiful and has just that like almost like airbrush quality beautiful beard and the silky hair. And that is simply one of the most powerful creatures in the modern world.
I mean, not to call drag queens creatures necessarily, unless that's the style they're going for, but I would not be against having 3 bearded drag queens playing the witches.
Truly, yes.
McBee. Because that is sort of the ultimate in, if you're going on a gender thing, where it's the feminine and the masculine have come together to create this altogether otherworldly, larger than life experience for you to be a part of. And it is,
Also, then the fact that they're dancing, if you have drag queens, you know, lip sync competition-esque dance, I'm there. I love that show.
That's amazing. Well, and exactly, it does make me wonder if, you know, something reads as otherworldly to an Elizabethan audience, what for a modern audience then fits that mold in the many, many ways that it's, you know, changed with all the paradigm shifts through history. And yeah, what does the 2020 witch look like? Or the 2020 weird sisters look like? And how are we playing with gender within that, where we, I think, have a way more expansive playground of, you know, opportunity there to make a statement.
I do think even as vixens, you know, we talk about this a lot, is that we're women in tights in the Renaissance, right? We're already playing with gender. We're already sort of, it's hard for us in 2020 to think that wearing tights is this, you know, crazy thing, but it actually is. And so if you think about the equivalent of a woman having a beard as a woman wearing pants, right? It's true. You have to think about the historical context of what is sort of, I don't know, weird. What is weird? What is queer? What is exciting for this audience?
And it's interesting that even so much time has gone by, still the idea of women with beards is still thought of often as being very taboo.
Yeah.
And though I would say it is probably more acceptable now than it was then, I do have friends who have beards, who present as female otherwise, who identify as female but also have beards, and some of them have very beautiful beards, and I am jealous. But it is a situation that not everybody, it is still now something that is thought of as an other. So think about, if even now it is still an other, how much of an other it was then. Because certainly progress does come in tiny incremental changes, but it has been a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So I sort of wonder what the equivalent would be now, but not that bearded women is that far off, actually, in terms of transgressive and taboo and what are you doing?
And power.
And power.
I feel like when I think of like beard symbolism, I always think of like a sage old man and the mark of how old he is. Let's say maybe it's a wizard. You're like, oh, he's 600 years old. That's why his beard touches the floor. It's just a badge of honor kind of, or more than that. It's just like an immediate identifier of.
It confers wisdom. It confers all sorts of intelligence and strength. I mean, if you look at Best Chris Pine, he is such a beautiful baby-faced delight without his beard. But once he has the beard, you're like, oh, I must listen to whatever it is he says. He must know best.
Hippolyta, I want to know
what I mean.
How do you feel about, as a foodie, when there's food in the beard too?
Is it fresh food? Because hygiene is important to me, and so if you know we are dancing about, eating of the guacamole, and it is dripping down your beard as our hedonistic tendencies are causing us to gyrate with pleasure, well, then we will just go to the stream and splishy splashy have a good time, and I will help comb it out of your beard.
Before it browns.
Absolutely.
Yes, once the guacamole is brown, I think that is the sign.
Well, I think on that note, I think we'd best be wrapping this up, shall we?
I'm very frightened.
We're leaving our audience with the spookiest advice, which is if the guacamole in his beard is brown, just
back away.
Just turn him down.
Just
turn him down. Yes. The guacamole in his beard is brown.
Turn
him down. The spookiest advice.
I think browned guacamole in another person's beard is more frightening than if I was to see a ghost or a bat or
Revenge incarnate.
The room.
Also, it's very expensive. It's always extra. Well, it has been so lovely to have all of you in the chat with us tonight. We hope that you have a nice spooky Halloween and that you are keeping close with your loved ones, putting on some fancy hats, whatever strikes your fancy. But I am Hippolyta.
I'm Brizo.
I'm Selene.
I am Thalassa. And of course, we are Vixens on Guard. If you are able to send us anything our way, you can find us on Venmo at Vixens on Guard. You can find us on the Book of Face if you have stumbled upon us through Twitch, Instagram, all of the things. And thank you for watching.
Bye, loves.
Spooky.
Woo!